There's a video for everyone. Okay. Well, we are going to go ahead and get started. If people pop in, that is great. So thank you so much for coming to the Trust Your Gut Masterclass. I am really excited to talk to you guys tonight. And whether you're live or watching the replay that I'm going to send out, I appreciate you taking the time. I know we are all really busy people, but I appreciate you taking the time to invest in yourself, invest in your health. So tonight our theme is trust your gut. And what does that mean? What do I mean by that? Well, for um as an idiom, in our regular day-to-day talking, it means to go with your instincts, right? And I saw a really funny video recently about someone's like, people tell me to trust my gut. My gut can't even handle dairy, thinking that their gut is so sensitive. And it's important that we trust ourselves and our instincts with our health as well, because often our instincts won't lead us too far astray, right? But tonight we're going to be talking about more like the inside of our gut, not that metaphorical gut, but our real gut and what it is and all the impacts it can have on our health so that we can feel better and live a happier, fuller life. So I'm really excited to get started, but so let's get into it. So the first, why isn't it advancing? There we go. But first, I would love to know why you are here. So if you want to put in the chat why you're here, what prompted you to sign up for this class? Is it you've been having some gut troubles and you want some answers? Is it you were just curious? I'd love to know if you want to put in the chat why you are here and what prompted you to come. I know some of you put the answer in your registration form that you filled out. But if you have any other thoughts about why you're here, I know some people wanted to know what to eat and different things like that. So while you guys are doing that, I have some questions. And to maintain a healthy gut, right? So we're going to answer that as we get going tonight. So here we go. So have you ever felt, so I'm going to read some statements, and if any of these hit home for you, I would love you to type a me in the chat. So have you ever felt like your body is a battery that is losing its power? I love that imagery of a battery that's losing its power. We've all had that battery that doesn't seem to really charge all the way anymore. It doesn't matter what I do, my weight goes nowhere. It takes too much time to exercise and eat healthy. Where you're anxious about going to a new restaurant, or you're always looking for the bathroom when you go somewhere new because you might have some digestive issues. My tummy issues are stressful and embarrassing and impact my everyday life. When I search for help, I end up more confused. And I put this picture, which isn't about nutrition, but I've been trying to snap screenshots lately of when I see things like this as I'm searching. So recently I was thinking about switching to a gas dryer for my house instead of an electric dryer for a variety of reasons. So I was trying to research, and I just thought this was so funny. And you probably can't see very well in the picture, but above it, it was like, are gas dryers more efficient, more energy efficient? And here on the same page of Google, this is just a screenshot. It says the exact opposite thing. The first one says gas dryers are also more energy efficient, and the next one says electric dryers are usually more efficient than gas dryers. Like, it's just silly. Like, you try to go look for an answer and Google will tell you both things at the same time. So it can be so confusing. And dealing with all of these things makes me anxious or depressed. So we all think of our gut and our health and all of these things as like this one simple thing, and it's not. It impacts our everyday life. So if you answered yes, that you have felt any of those things, which I know some of you put in the chat, Welcome. That's what we're here for tonight. And you are in good company. You are not alone in feeling this way. Too many people feel this way. Um, I've even felt that way about gut health issues. And so it's not, we feel really isolated when we feel that way, but we're not actually alone. So, what are we going to do tonight? So here's our goal. Our goal is to talk about the gut and the microbiome that lives within the gut. We're going to talk about 4 things. We're going to talk about what the heck that is, what it does, what hurts it, and how can you help it. And our ultimate goal is that you feel like this instead. You feel like you're energized throughout the day. Your diet is focused on your whole self rather than just focusing on that number on the scale. You feel supported, confident, and informed, not just confused, like having the opposite answers to the exact question pop up on the first page of Google. And these changes are going to fit into your everyday real life. Like, we can't make crazy changes that aren't ever going to work for us. Life is going to happen. We have to keep going. And your tummy issues, for the most part, disappear. That would feel really great, I think. So if you think that would feel great, you can put a yes in the chat. If you would like to feel this way instead of the way we had talked about in the first earlier slide. So this is an open discussion. Please use the chat. If you have questions as I'm going along, please feel free to put them in the chat and I will answer them as I go along if I see them and I can. And there will be an open Q&A at the end. So if it's a question you just want to put in there, you can say for the end, and I'll know to leave it in the chat until the end as well. And then I also at the end, I'm going to talk about where we could go from here with other services and options that I have that are specific to people who registered for this class. So who the heck am I? So I'm a registered dietitian. I was born in Los Angeles, but I was raised in Missouri. I don't think I have an accent. I'm told that I do. If I always say to people, if you think I have an accent, you should hear the people from where I grew up in, how they talk. I did my undergraduate degree in dietetics at Brigham Young University in Utah, and dietitians have to do an internship, kind of like a residency. The doctors do, and I did that as well as a master's degree in clinical nutrition at the same time at Rush University in Chicago. This is where I met my husband. We got married and we have 4 kiddos that are crazy and keep me and my husband very busy. I am a thyroid cancer survivor, which may be how some of you found me through my low iodine dietitian website. I'm a wannabe foodie. I love to try new food. I love to try cooking new food. I love to eat. I put that picture in of me and my husband. We love to try new things and do crazy things. And so he had bought these kind of like dinosaurish beef ribs that we were trying one day. And I also loved living here in Colorado. I love to hike, go biking. I love to play volleyball. My daughter is playing volleyball right now, and it's really fun for me to go watch her. And my husband is a really good skier, and I pretend to ski and keep up with him. So that's kind of who I am. So one other thing that I think is really important before we start diving into our real topic tonight of the gut and its microbiome is we have a general understanding of what it means to be healthy. So often hear people say, well, I just want to be healthy. Well, health is a continuum. It isn't this place that we get to go. Health is also, people will be like, well, that's a healthy meal or this is a healthy food. All of that is a continuum, right? We can make healthier or less healthy choices, and all of those choices can lead us to the life and choices that we want or the life and choices that we don't want. But it's this continuum on a scale. And we're always constantly moving on the continuum. But we're hopefully moving mostly in the direction of the life that we want, right? Instead of the life that we don't want. And our choices should hopefully be leading us there. Now, it can be tricky sometimes, right? Because there's a lot of misinformation out there, which I'm here to try to help you with as well. But it's just, I feel like really important to say that, to define that. So a couple years ago, I did this challenge where I had to drink a whole bunch of water, like a gallon of water every day. I did 2 workouts every day, and I gave up all desserts for over 2 months. Now you could say at the end of that, it was 75 days. If you've heard of 75 hard, that was what I did. And you could say that on day 75, I was really healthy. And then on day 76, I ate all the things that I had saved that I had wanted, like Halloween and Thanksgiving and things that had happened. I saved those so that I could have them. So on day 76, we were actually up skiing. I had hot chocolate and I had treats and I just did whatever I wanted. And other than skiing, I didn't like do a workout or anything. Um, I didn't like automatically go from being healthy to not healthy, right? It was a continuum. I was maybe less healthy than I had been the day before. But so it's important to remember that it is this continuum that we are constantly on. Um, I think it's also important to know that health isn't a straight line. Our plan is that we are just going to start making healthy choices and we're going to get straight to that flag. And it's really more like that bottom line. We're going to maybe make some good progress and then life is going to happen and we're going to maybe fall down into a pit. And then we might get up and then we'll have all these ups and downs and all arounds. But if you notice, even if we're up and down on that bottom, we're still making progress towards that end goal. And we're closer than if we hadn't started at all. And so it's important to be patient with those dips and different things that happen in our life. It's not going to always be a straight line, but as long as we are making progress, um, then it's a good thing. And sometimes that making progress is just maintaining whatever we just did, right? Maybe we go through a really difficult time and aren't able to be as diligent in our choices, but maybe we don't gain any weight in that time. That is still progress, right? Because whatever we had changes we had made, enough were able to stick that we had maintained our weight instead of gaining weight. That's progress, right? Our lifestyle has changed. So it's important to keep all of that kind of forefront in our mind. Another thing that's really important to remember is health is consistency. I see too much of both of the sides of this picture of people who are consistent, and then oh, it's a birthday, I'm gonna go eat. It's my birthday, I'm gonna eat cake, or my friends invited me to go out, and they feel like they can't even enjoy going out or doing whatever they're going to do because, oh, I ruined my diet by going out one night. No, you didn't. It is the sum of what we do over a week, a month, a year, our decade, all those things. It adds up over time. Um, Versus there are plenty of people on the other end of the spectrum that don't make very good choices, but maybe they work out one time or, oh, I ate one really healthy salad and well, I didn't feel any different. Well, that isn't enough to make a difference, right? If a little deviation off of the path we wanted isn't going to make a difference, a little dip into the path we wanted isn't also going to make a difference. This week is a perfect example in my life. I was out of town for 4 days last week and I landed back here in Denver at about 9 in the morning on Monday, and I have been running ever since. I have maybe spent, other than sleeping, like awake hours in the last 3 days, 4 hours at my house. I have just been running. So I haven't been able to get the exercise in that I wanted, and I haven't been as consistent with my choices as I wanted. But I know that I haven't like ruined anything. I just need to do the best I can to keep getting back on that path. So think about a toddler that's learning to walk, right? If they fall, we wouldn't say they failed at learning to walk. It's just what happens. So it's another important thing. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about what health is as we think about it is health is complex. So, oh, sorry. So we are here to talk about diet, and that is super important. And I don't want to downplay that. I'm a dietitian. Obviously, I think our diet and nutrition is really important, but it is not enough, right? We cannot solely focus on our diet and expect to get the changes that we want long term, because our overall health is not just what we eat, it's how we sleep. Sleep is really important. It is how we exercise, but not just like cardio exercise. I've definitely had people come and they're like, well, I'm really working out and I'm going to all these cardio classes, but I'm not really getting toned. because you're not doing anything for toning. You need to strength, you need to do flexibility. Flexibility is really important for our long-term health. We need to do strength training. Muscle tone and muscle strength is really important for our overall health. Stress and our stress levels are so important for our overall health. So many people come to me for weight loss and for help, and they are not sleeping very well and they're under a lot of stress. Those two things are going to sabotage a lot of the efforts you make in your diet. So if you're not able to make those changes, as like try to make improvements there, you're only going to get so far. With any of these, you could be sleeping really well. You cannot outsleep or out exercise a bad diet. You cannot de-stress but not do any of the other things. It all works together. Genetics is a big component and that we don't fully understand, and has a lot of different minute little ways that can affect your overall health and your overall health risks that it's important to remember. And your mental and emotional health is a really big piece of the puzzle. So all of these things come together to make your health. And so it is really important to remember that as we go through what we're talking about tonight with the gut and the gut microbiome, it affects a lot of these areas and a lot of these areas affect the gut. So it's important to remember all of those. One last caveat before we get into what we're actually here to talk about with the gut and our gut health. Some important notes. It is really difficult to study the bacteria that live in our gut for the gut microbiome. They are what's called anaerobic bacteria, which means they don't, hold on one second. They do not live in an oxygen rich environment, which makes sense, right? Because they live in our gut where there isn't oxygen. So they it's really difficult to study because you need very specific environments to study them where they would not be exposed to oxygen. So it makes them really difficult to study. It can be difficult to create changes and then study them long term. So as humans, if you've ever tried to make a change in your life, it can be really difficult, right? And so even in a study, just magically putting people in a study doesn't mean they're going to magically be really good at keeping up with changes in the long term. So much of the research that I'm going to present and that has been done about our gut microbiota is, if it's in humans, is what we call epidemiology studies, which means we just follow people or we just look at people at a point in time and maybe they remember. So we can give people a questionnaire and ask them, what are the types of foods you ate over the last year or the last 5 years? How many of you can remember very well what you ate in the last week? No less this questionnaire that's like, how many times did you eat chicken? How many times did you eat this? So if you ever see like the random studies that will come out or little tidbits of nutrition that are like, people who eat 12 hazelnuts a day live longer than people who do not. Those are from epidemiology studies where we just follow people. And the important thing to know with that is that those are not showing a cause and effect. There is nothing that we can say that it is the hazelnuts that those people ate that changed what it is. It just means we see that there is a connection. And it could just be that those people are connected. You know, you could say people who never ate carrots had a lower risk of cancer. Well, that doesn't mean not eating carrots lowers your risk of cancer. It just happens that somehow those people who didn't eat carrots may have had something else. So it's really important to note that we don't always know whether there's just a correlation that these two things happen to happen side by side, or if we know that there is a cause and effect between the two of those. This is a newer area of research within the last like 20 to 30 years. It's really been burgeoning. So we don't have long-term data. And it is really hard. Another thing about difficulty of studying it long-term is like we can extrapolate from animal models. There's a lot of things with animal models. We can, in labs, they can create these things called germ-free mice, meaning they don't have any bacteria in their gut. And we can study what's different about them, but they're not humans. And we can't, wouldn't be ethical for us to like try and create a human that didn't have that. Um, And as soon as humans are born, they have bacteria in their gut. So it would be really unethical to do that in like a human study. It would also be pretty unethical to try to like follow people over a long time, besides the challenge of it, of like purposely inoculate them with different bacteria to see what happens over time. There's a lot of ethical issues with that. So it's important to know that as we go into all of this. Also, as you'll see as we get into this, there are a lot of different strains of bacteria and different products out there. So there's a lot to sift through. So those are just some important notes I wanted to like cover before we got too far into this. So now that we're about to get into what we're really here to talk about, throw in the chat, like, do you know what a probiotic is, a prebiotic, a fermented foods? Have you heard of SIBO? Do you know of some foods that are good or maybe not good for your gut health? Or is there something in that that is, you know, a question that you had? I want to make sure we cover those, but not like dive too deeply if you all already know what something is. So if you want to drop in the chat, if you know or do not know specifically about one of those things, and that's what you wanted to hear about, I would love if you could put that in the chat. I'm going to grab a quick drink while you do that. Difference between pre and probiotics. We will get there for sure. Okay, and well, anybody else? The pre and probiotics. Okay, that is one we're for sure going to talk about. So first off, we're going to talk a little bit getting into why do we care about our gut. So these are all symptoms of gut issues, and this is how many visits to a doctor's office or emergency room that they generate within a year. That is crazy, right? 36, almost 37 million doctors or emergency visits. And why do we care about that? Even if you aren't having these symptoms, is it's a lot of money. Think of all the money that is spent on that. And if you are someone who has a lot of these symptoms, you know that a lot of that money is maybe not being spent super efficiently. Like maybe we're not getting what they need in those visits. So it's a lot of money. And even if you aren't having those visits, it's increasing your health insurance costs and premiums to help cover for those people, right? So that's really important. Another reason we care is something called health-related quality of life. So we all know what quality of life is, but health-related means our health issues decreasing our quality of life. And these are all different things related to our GI tract that can decrease our health-related quality of life. So having gas or bloating and GI pain, altered defecation, whether it's too little or too much, whether we're depressed or have anxiety because of our gut issues, that's a quality of life issue. If we're starting to have different thoughts that maybe lead to that, related to that, those are all different things that decrease our health quality of life. And there's actually all sorts of questions you can ask. And some of these were in the things that I asked at the beginning. So, do you get anxious when you go to a new restaurant? Do you feel as if you've slowed down? Do you feel like your body is like a battery that's losing its power? Do you keep your GI symptoms hidden from people because you feel like they would treat you differently? Do you feel like you would lose opportunities at work? These are all really big things that can affect people's quality of life related to gut health. So, what is our gut? So, our gut is referring to our entire digestive system. And our digestive system is actually one very long tube from our mouth to our anus. And it's all one long interconnected tube. And if you think about it, it is actually outside of our body. It is a single tube that is like the outside world inside of our body, but it's not, there is no connection to other tissues, if that makes sense. It's kind of like a hole going through our body. So, and that makes sense because then that's how our microbiome lives in there. Now, there are accessory organs besides just that long tube that we know about. There's the liver and the pancreas and the gallbladder, and there's other things in there that help. So what does the digestive system do? It actually does more than just digest our food. So it helps us digest the food. It absorbs the food. It helps with excretion when we poo. It can help with detoxification. So our liver helps go through and detox a lot of things in our blood and can send some of that through bile into our digestive system to get rid of it in our when we go to the bathroom, when we defecate. So our immune system is really big in our gut. So 70 to 80% of the body's immune cells are in the gut. Again, that makes sense, right? Because it's like this defensive system. So if you think of like our skin has a lot of immune cells because it's this defense to the outside world. And our gut is like that as well. It's filtering through a lot of things from the outside before it lets it into our body. Um, it helps produce vitamins like vitamin K and B12, and the microbiome, which we're going to get to in just a second, helps with that. 90 to 95% of our body's serotonin is produced in our gut. Serotonin is kind of what we think of as like one of those feel good hormones or neurotransmitter that helps us feel good. And it houses our microbiome. So, what is this microbiome that we've talked about? So, basically, it is all of the living cells in our GI tract, all the way from your mouth to your anus, that are not human cells. This can be a variety of things. It is not just bacteria, though we normally think of it as bacteria. It can be viruses. Most of the time, we don't want those. It can be fungus. There are some fungus that is good to have, some fungi that is good to have in our gut. There can be eukaryotes, which we would think of as like a parasite. Um, so the numbers and types of bacteria are going to vary from person to person and region to region. So all of the bacteria in particular are of a couple phyla. So like a bigger realm when if you remember way back to science class, phyla was pretty high up, but there's lots of sub species level. So even if you're looking at a probiotic, which we'll talk about in a little bit, you may see like a lot of them will say like L something. They'll have the same like first letter and it'll be like a letter period and then something longer because they're all the same phyla. It's just different species within that phyla and they all do different things. Now, one person may have more than 400 species of bacteria. And this begins developing right when you were born, from the minute you start ingesting any sort of food. And your gut microbiome is greatly influenced by what your parents' gut microbiome was. And it can vary region to region because some of what we get from our microbiome is from the soil and different things in our environment. So that is really important. And it is important to know that um, I lost my train of thought for a second. So it is okay to have these bacteria. We need them. We're going to get into some interesting facts about um, the germ-free mice that I mentioned, but we need these bacteria and they truly do help us. It's when there's an imbalance that it isn't a good thing. It's especially not a good thing if they migrate from our gut, if they somehow migrate into our bloodstream. That is not where they belong, and that can be a problem. Um, so they're mostly in the large intestine or colon, but they can be found anywhere from our mouth. I mean, we all think about, mouth has a lot of germs. Um, Anywhere from our mouth. Not a lot live in our stomach just because of the acidic environment. There are some in the small intestine and then a lot in the colon. There are some people who think that maybe your gut microbiome even starts before birth. It does differ. In levels of microbiome for babies that are born vaginally versus a C-section, which kind of makes sense. A vaginal birth, they get exposed to a few more things on their way out as they go. And it says it may outnumber human cells 10 to 1. There's a lot of different, we used to say that there were more cells and then sometimes they're like not. And the funny part is they'll say the amount can depend on your last defecation event. So, like it says here, it can make up to 60% of the weight of your feces. So, we are pooping out a lot of bacteria every time. So, if you think about that much of how much is still within us and naturally going. But by the age of 3, it is pretty similar to what's going to be seen when you're an adult. Um, so, um, the gut microbiome is what we consider a symbiotic relationship. We help it and we give it things, it gives us things. So it can help us digest our food. It helps us digest and ferment fiber, which a lot of us think about as producing gas. Like when we eat more fiber, it produces gas. So um, the um, the bacteria digest it and they can create these things called small chain fatty acids. It can also, the bacteria also produce methane gas. So that can be important. Then I talked about those germ-free mice. They have found that the germ-free mice need to eat 30% more food to get the same amount of calories because of the lack of that bacteria helping with the digestion of the food. It can help synthesize that B12 and vitamin K, like I talked about. It can help recycle bile. So most of the bile that our liver produce gets kind of broken down and then recycled and absorbed. The cholesterol that's in it can be reabsorbed and sit back through. And that can help promote longevity in some people. By having those bacteria, if you kind of think of it as a competitive space, like there's only so much space, if we are ingesting harmful bacteria, they may not be able to stay and cause problems. So having the right bacteria can reduce inflammation and infections. And they have found that different bacteria can influence different peptide levels. So, um, like GLP-1. And if you've heard of GLP-1, that is the GLP-1 is part of what is the Wegovy and Ozempic and all these newer weight loss drugs. They're GLP-1 agonists and they affect our hunger and satiety levels. So these bacteria can play a really important role. And besides that, I mentioned they can synthesize B vitamins and vitamin K. We as humans cannot synthesize any vitamin except vitamin D, so it is important. And they can also help synthesize amino acids from the foods that we eat. So they really are important and helpful. So we talked about how 70 to 80% of the body's immune system is in the GI tract. So we have two types of immunity. We have innate immunity and adaptive immunity. So innate immunity is just your body senses something foreign and it attacks it. Adaptive immunity is like why we get a vaccine. Our body recognizes something and it can better attack it later. The gut and our bacteria, especially with early exposure, can help our immune system learn good from bad. So any sort of allergy or autoimmune disease is where our body has gotten crossed of what is good and bad and is attacking something that maybe isn't bad necessarily and is giving us, and we're having the symptoms from that. Any sort of allergy, especially related to the gut, would be a food allergy, or autoimmune disease is where your immune cells, for whatever reason, are attacking part of your own body. And so early exposure to different things is really important. Breastfed babies versus formula babies have different bacteria in their gut. C-section versus vaginal birth babies have different bacteria in our gut. Now, this microbiome also produces substances that can help prevent the growth of other bacteria. And there's just competition, right? There's a limited amount of space. These bacteria, to a certain extent, like can attach. There's certain places where they can attach in the intestine. If we have good bacteria in those spots, the bad bacteria kind of go out and can help interfere with that. So the juice that and products that these bacteria can create can also help create tighter junctions. So in our small intestine in particular, where food is absorbed, the chemicals from our food have to get past the barrier of the cells of our small intestine. And if those barriers, if those cells separate more things could get through. We don't want that to happen. So the juice from some of these good bacteria help encourage those cells to stay tightly connected and create that good barrier, which helps prevent infection and inflammation from things that shouldn't be going through into our bloodstream and getting out of the digestive tract. So that is really important. So it does all of these things, which is really important for our immunity that I think we often don't think about. Preventing allergies. So I kind of talked about that. So that the allergies and inappropriate response. This is a really interesting area of research. And again, where we have a lot of correlation and causation that we don't really know. But children who develop food allergies have different bacteria in their gut than children who don't. Children, it says, raised around farm animals or even pets, or my favorite scientific term I've ever seen was non-sterile pacifiers, were less likely to develop any sort of allergies and asthma as they got older. So this is another area we don't fully understand, but it helps develop that immune system early in life if we're exposed to those things. So being a little less afraid of our little ones getting a little dirty can sometimes be really helpful in them being exposed to some of this bacteria and developing their immune system. So we mentioned that it makes a lot of serotonin. So there is a lot of communication between our gut and our brain. Sometimes people like to call the gut like the second brain. So it produces and uses a lot of those neurotransmitters that we've talked about and about, like serotonin, dopamine, the endorphins, and adrenaline. Another correlation, causation, we don't know, but people with autism have a different microbiome than their peers who do not. Your microbiome can change when you have stress or anxiety. Germ-free mice had lower memory in their hippocampus, in their brain. So when we created those germ-free mice, they had cognitive deficits from development. And it can be very bacteria specific, and certain probiotics have been shown to reduce anxiety and depressive behaviors in some studies. So it's not something we fully understand, but an unhealthy gut, if we're off with some of those dopamine, serotonin, endorphins, adrenaline, all of that's going to affect how we feel and those emotions and that cognitive process. Again, something that we're learning a lot about. What does it do with hormones? So I mentioned bile before, and the bacteria helps with the recycling of bile. Bile is primarily made of cholesterol. Cholesterol is the base of many hormones in our body. In our digestive tract, there's also a lot of processes where our body recycles or breaks down hormones, especially our sex hormones like estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, and different imbalances in those cycles can alter the levels of different types of that hormone and can affect how you feel, right? Hormones can affect gut health. Whether you have too much estrogen or testosterone or different things, it can affect transit time. Sometimes too much of a certain type of hormone can cause diarrhea, too little can cause constipation. And there's also some link with thyroid hormone dysfunction. So having the wrong bacteria can affect the nutrients we need for thyroid hormone, like iodine. But it also can affect how our body, having different bacteria in our gut, can affect how our body uses that hormone, which thyroid hormone affects everything. It's our energy, it's our metabolism, it's all sorts of things. So again, it kind of goes everywhere. There's a lot of research on our skin. So people with eczema have different bacteria than people without eczema. And having a dysbiosis is associated with problems with acne and other skin problems like rosacea and different things. So, and you would think like they're so disconnected, but having different bacteria there affects the metabolites that go in our system and affect that immunity and everything throughout our whole body system. And weight and energy, which I promised we would talk about. So people with obesity and type 2 diabetes have a dysbiosis compared to their peers. Now, we don't know which is the cause and effect, but in animals, not in humans, there has been a link to an increase in obesity with the overuse of antibiotics. We have not shown that in humans at the same time. And as you can tell, that would probably be really difficult to study because the rise of the antibiotic also happened with the rise of a lot more modernization, a lot more access to most people to abundant food. So that's kind of going to be a hard one to tease out. People that are obese have a less diverse microbiome. Perhaps that is affecting how their body utilizes those calories. Again, we talked about those hormone changes like GLP-1, and even the sex hormones can affect your appetite and satiety. And if you're having chronic inflammation, either causing the dysbiosis or from the dysbiosis, that's going to again change how all of your body uses all of that energy, how you feel. So it's connected to all of these different things. So let's get to our next part of when it goes wrong, or how do I know if I have a problem? And it seems kind of crazy to think, how would you not know that you have a problem? But some people have lived with a problem their whole lives. Maybe their whole family has had the same problem, so they don't know. I knew a doctor once that was telling this story of someone had asked, like, why do people in Mexico, like, how can people who live in like Mexico or, South American countries or places where you go where they say like don't drink the water? Well, they drink the water. And he's like, they just think diarrhea is normal. Like they have the parasites and they think it's normal. Like they don't know any different. And so if you've lived your life this whole way, then you don't know. The other important thing to know as we go forward is there's a difference between optimal and normal. And too often in modern medicine, we're okay with, well, you fit in the normal range, but is that really optimal for you and for your overall health? That's a different question. Um, so if you took the poop questionnaire that I sent out, you probably had questions like this, but you should be defecating at least once a day. And you want something in kind of this normal range. If you are having poop that looks like this, you're too constipated. If you're having poop that looks like this, then obviously you have some issues and it's not the right thing. So it's important to know what is normal. And I would say in here is more of like the optimal. Probably some of these, like the type 2 or the type 5, probably most people would consider semi-normal, but it isn't optimal. So how do you know when it goes wrong? You have the wrong transit time. So typical would be, or normal could be 36 to 72 hours. Maybe you only poop every other day or every 3 days. Really, it'd be best to go optimal to clean yourself out at least once a day. If you have bloating, belching, gas, all sorts of different things, these are all signs that something is going wrong, and it could be related to your gut microbiome. So why does it go wrong though? So as we age, we naturally are going to have some different things happen. Our body just stops secreting as many different things, which may affect the bacteria that can live there. So if our stomach is creating less acid, it's a less acidic environment, different bacteria may be able to thrive there than if we had optimal acidity in our stomach. And there is a shift as we age in the bacterial flora. Maybe we don't have a diverse enough microbiome. We talked about people with obesity often have a less diverse microbiome. Different medications can affect it. So again, antibiotics are the really easy one to pinpoint. A lot of people with digestive systems are put on PPIs, proton pump inhibitors. They help with heartburn. But if you're changing the acidity, you're changing what bacteria can thrive. And overuse of NSAIDs, which is your Tylenol and your over-the-counter pain medication, ibuprofen, those types of things, can change your system. Exposures to toxins over time can change it. If you have autoimmune issues, your genetics, any dysbiosis, any nutrition deficiencies, and stress and inflammation from the outside. So there's a lot of reasons why it can go wrong. And what are some of the things that happen? So if you've heard of leaky gut, it gets kind of a lot of press, I feel like. And that's where we were talking about those tight junctions in your intestine. That lining can be disrupted or damaged, and it kind of can create bigger junctions. It's not like we have holes and like undigested food is passing into your system, but maybe food that's not digested as much as it should be, or chemicals or things that your body would normally funnel out because it's too big to get through. Well, now if that gap is bigger, it can fit through, right? Our nutrients may be malabsorbed because so many things are going on. So it's not supposed to be like nothing can get through, right? Think of it, fingers are a good example, right? I could run water over my fingers like this and things would still get through. So it's not meant to be impermeable. It's not just supposed to be more permeable. Um, and this can be a little controversial with some people, but is this a body-wide problem or is it just in the gut? That's more to be learned. A low fiber diet can change your microbiome and hurt it. And there's a generational effect. So if your grandparents ate a low fiber diet, that changed their microbiome, and you get a lot of the beginning of your microbiome is based on your parents. So if your grandparents didn't, then your parents had a different microbiome. If they ate a low fiber diet, it changed it further and it gets passed on. Too many antibiotics, our sterile lifestyle, so not having contact with the soil or pets or other different things so that we're exposed to things, and food intolerances or just inflammation in the gut can lead to changes in the microbiome. So how do we help it? So a lot of times you'll hear the 4R diet, or the 4Rs to helping your microbiome. We're going to talk about 5, but the last 2 kind of go together. So the first is things we need to remove. So we need to remove, specifically with foods and nutrition that we're going to talk about, we need to remove the foods that are causing us a problem. Now, this needs to be done with caution. So there's elimination diets out there, and there's a low FODMAP diet that are pretty popular, I feel like, with a lot of people. These diets are not meant to be permanent. You are not meant to be on a low FODMAP diet for the rest of your life. So when we are removing these things, it is to allow the gut to heal. And you're supposed to be adding things back in as you can tolerate them. And the more you remove, your gut can get kind of lazy and it's not going to be used to all these things. So it's important to keep presenting it with things as you can tolerate it. And you may have a dose tolerance with things. Like you hear a lot of people avoid gluten. I feel like it's a really big one. Not everyone who avoids gluten has celiac. Celiac is a very specific autoimmune disease. There are a lot of people who maybe don't tolerate gluten very well, but they don't have celiac. But they may have a dose tolerance. Some people with dairy, maybe they don't tolerate a lot of dairy, but they can tolerate small amounts. So there is if you do a low elimination type diet where you're eliminating things, and if you're having a lot of GI symptoms, I would recommend an easy place to start is gluten, dairy, and eggs. Those are really common irritants that people struggle with. You can go out and get testing for foods that they say you're allergic to. That's great if you want to do that. That does not mean you're allergic to all of those foods and can never eat them again. Some people will come away from that test not being able to eat hardly anything. They'll have like 5 foods left. No, just because something triggers on those tests doesn't mean you can't ever eat it. You need to be working with a professional to help you know how to read those tests and how to dose those things back into your life to see what you can tolerate and what you can't. So it really is important that if you start eliminating things from your diet, that you don't just like eliminate everything. And as you're adding things back in, I was having this conversation with a client recently. Like, it's important to only add back in one thing at a time. If you've ever started feeding a new baby foods, like you don't want to feed them 5 different foods. And then if they have a reaction, it's like, well, I don't know which one of those foods, right? So really simplifying the things that you add back in at a time is really important. So if I haven't had any gluten or dairy, and then I've cut out beef for some reason and maybe tomatoes, and then I go have a beef taco on a flour tortilla, I've just added 4 things that I had cut out. And if I have a reaction, I have no idea which one of those 4 things upset me. So it's really important to do it carefully and with a lot of thought. So now that we've removed things, we need to replace those foods, right? We need to add in more fiber-rich foods. So our fruits, our vegetables, our whole grains, and our beans and our legumes, so like lentils and peas and things like that, things that have a lot of fiber. So the good bacteria in our gut love fiber. Now you have to add it in slowly or you will get really gassy, and too much fiber too quickly can actually lead you to be constipated. You need to be drinking plenty of water. There are two types of fiber in our foods. There's soluble and insoluble fiber. And that will come up soon when we get into the pre and probiotics. So soluble fiber means that it can dissolve in water. So think of like your Miralax. Insoluble means it does not dissolve. Think of mini wheat cereal. But it absorbs the water and expands. Both of them can take in water, and it expands, but it isn't going to like dissolve in the water, is one really important difference. Another thing we can replace more into our lives is fermented foods. And so what are those? So kimchi, sauerkraut, kefir, kombucha, miso, yogurt to a certain extent, and then there are such a thing as naturally fermented pickles. Now, with some of these things, you do need to be really careful and look at your labels. So, somehow sourdough bread did not make it on here. So sourdough is a really great example of, it's a really easily accessible fermented food, but there are plenty of people out there who cannot tolerate like wheat bread, but they can tolerate sourdough that is made with wheat flour. Like it's not a gluten-free sourdough, because the bacteria and yeast that have made the sourdough are breaking down the gluten in a different way so that it is more digestible for people. The other good thing with all of these is that they are good sources of antioxidants, and lots of antioxidants are going to be great for controlling inflammation, which we are bringing all sorts of things into our digestive tract. It's great to have those antioxidants to tame those things down. Now, I mentioned being careful with our fermented foods. We need to check our labels. And sourdough in particular is one of those where you need to check your label. So true sourdough will not have any added yeast as a separate ingredient. So, like this one, this San Francisco extra sourdough, it has flour, it has water, it has yeast, it has soybean oil, gluten, salt. I don't even know, like it's a flavor of sourdough. Whereas both of these, here again, this one is gonna have, it has cultured wheat flour. That cultured wheat flour right there is your sourdough. So if you've ever made sourdough from home, it has a starter that's this bubbly cultured wheat flour. True sourdough is only leavened with that. Now, a store product is probably gonna have yeast added to it. But this has wheat sourdough, which is water and fermented wheat flour. This one doesn't list that anywhere, any sort of fermented wheat flour. It just lists natural yeast. So there is like sourdough as a product and there's sourdough as a flavor, if that makes any sense. And so if you're looking for sourdough for its digestive benefits, you're going to want to really check your labels. Most other fermented foods that I looked at, like sauerkraut or kimchi or kefir, like that's how they exist, is with those bacteria. So that is, you don't have to worry as much about that. But sourdough is a big one that you need to watch your labels for, but can be really beneficial. Some people really thrive with these fermented foods. And you can make your own sauerkraut. You can make your own pickles. All of these things that are naturally fermenting from vegetables. I mean, sauerkraut is the easiest example of it. Is just cabbage and salt. You can add a little water, but it's going to start leaking its own water, and it will, like, you can just mix. There's plenty of recipes, and it's just like mix chopped cabbage and salt. And in a few days, you have sauerkraut. I've done it myself. It's really pretty simple. So it's just some important things to think about to help with that. Yogurt, it's really going to vary how many cultures are in it. A lot of our yogurt is pretty tamed down, but there are yogurts out there like Activia and different things that are going to have extra cultures added to it as well. So now we're to the pro and prebiotics, which all of you wanted to know. So this is the re-inoculate. So with foods, we've done what we can. Now we need to re-inoculate and get the good bacteria in there. So probiotics are bacteria you ingest that are either to colonize, so you want them to live in your gut, or often it is just to help promote healthy bacteria. There's plenty of research out there that actually a lot of the probiotics don't actually like colonize your gut. They just help improve the health, overall health and balance. They may help pull out some of the not so good gut and help the good ones grow faster. Fermented foods are a source of that bacteria. There are supplements. Now, the important caveat, which I mentioned before, is there are hundreds of strains out there. This is not a one size fit all. You do not have the same microbiome as your next door neighbor. So a probiotic that works really well for them may do nothing for you because it's not addressing the imbalance that you have. So if you are taking a whole lot, it could potentially cause harm. Most of them out there aren't going to do that. Be aware that they're you're looking at the product and getting from a reputable brand. There are plenty of brands out there that have been accused, like they've been tested and they have nowhere near the millions of live active cultures that they say they do. Making sure it's housed appropriately, because those bacteria have to get through the acidic environment of our stomach so that whatever form you're taking it in is going to survive to our stomach. Different bacteria do different things. And they have been shown to maybe help with antibiotic side effects, like diarrhea from antibiotics is because we change that microbiome. Taking antibiotics, or sorry, a probiotic simultaneously and then after a large dose of antibiotics can be really beneficial. And they have seen that it may reduce the number of colds people get in a year by taking a probiotic. So there are three kind of categories of probiotics. So the first is, this is what I was talking about, like everything will say L or B kind of on a lot of the probiotics. These are the two phyla. Lactobacillus and bifidobacterium are the two phyla that primarily live in our gut, and it's a lot of different species. So there are a natural part. There's over 500 trials assessing validity of these. But again, these don't actually typically colonize and live in your gut. They just improve your overall health. A second category is Saccharomyces, which is a fungus. It's a yeast. Again, this doesn't colonize. It just helps improve health. And the last are soil-based probiotics. These are the least researched. And this is the one that will colonize long term. And so it has to say bacillus on it if it's going to be a soil-based probiotic. So there are different kinds out there. And often staying with the ones that are most well-researched can be a really great way, but if they're not giving you the benefit, maybe you need to add in some of these others. There are some out there who say you need to be taking all three or you're just wasting your time and money. So, and here's what I was meaning. So if you have, and it's different for your different systems. So if you have diarrhea dominant irritable bowel versus constipation dominant irritable bowel. So irritable bowel is where probiotics have had a lot of research because we don't really have any other way to help people often. But you can see these are really different bacteria that help, and look at all the different strains. Like maybe that one doesn't help, but you've got however many strains to get through. So it can be a process if you're going the re-inoculation route through probiotics, and know that it may not be a quick fix or a one-try fix. Now we're to prebiotics. Now, a lot of products out there, as a side note, are what we call a synbiotic, and they will have a pro and a prebiotic. A prebiotic is food that the bacteria want to eat that is not digestible by humans. This is typically soluble fiber. These soluble fibers are in these listed foods here, including beans that I misspelled, unfortunately. There are not huge amounts. To get the amounts you are getting in a prebiotic supplement, you would be eating a lot of those vegetables, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be incorporating them because they are good for you. Basically, if I'm thinking of a non-fully supplement prebiotic, like that's what it's supplemented as, I think of the fiber one where they've added a lot of things. They add in typically chicory and inulin are the things they add in to get all the fiber in there without it tasting like whole grain. With these, it is really important because it is a fiber that you're getting enough water or it can cause some distress. And it is important to note, like any of these that you add, things may get better before they get worse. I know I've taken probiotics at different times when I was having some gut troubles. And for me, when I have noticed that prebiotics really have worked, symptoms actually got worse and then they got better. So there was kind of a like detox period where the probiotic was helping clear out the things that were not good. And then I saw great improvement after. And so that's another important caveat to think about as you're taking any of these supplements. There are some other supplements out there called postbiotics and I can't even think of what the other ones are. They're mostly not really well researched and you don't need to be taking those supplements. So I didn't include them in here. Along with re-inoculating, though, we need to repair and rebalance. So we need to be eating those antioxidants, the good fats, less processed foods, sticking to the outside of the grocery store as much as possible, getting plenty of vitamins, possibly taking a multivitamin if you think it's needed, getting the appropriate amount of exercise. If you are living a high-stress lifestyle and that is part of what caused your gut problems, you can do all you want to fix the gut problems, they're going to come back. So I am a perfect example. When I was in graduate school, my friends and I, we called it irritable bowel graduate school syndrome. That graduate school just stressed us out so much that we all kind of ended up with irritable bowel. And I took probiotics and they helped. I would take about an 8 or 12-week course, I can't remember off the top of my head right now, of probiotics, and I would do really well for several months. And then I hadn't changed any of the stressor. So I was still experiencing stress, which then led to the inflammation, which then led to the problems of irritable bowel. And so I would need the probiotics again. So you can make all the food and probiotic changes that you want, but if you're not trying to help repair and rebalance what is going on, it's not going to help. Improving your mental health along with stress, I feel like those go together. Getting enough sleep. Sleep is really undervalued in our society. We all say we're going to sleep when we're dead. Well, you'll get there a lot sooner if you don't actually focus on sleep. I heard a really great thing today that I liked of, if your goal is to get 8 hours of sleep, you should try to spend 9 hours in bed. Which I totally resonated with, like, right? We all think, okay, I need to get 8 hours of sleep. Okay, I'm going to get up at 6, so I need to be in bed at 10, and we all like climb in our bed at 10 and are turning the lights out. Well, it's going to take a little while for us to sleep, and in the morning, it may take a little while for us to wake up. Like, give yourself that extra time. Even a healthy person with no sleep problems, it's going to take 15 to 30 minutes to fall asleep. So giving yourself that leeway to get the sleep that you need is going to be really important. And because if we're not sleeping, our body is kind of on like the verge of an inflammatory process because it's just trying to keep up and it can't. So, and reducing other inflammatory habits you have, like alcohol or smoking, are obviously good to help with that repair and rebalance. So, what did you learn today? I hope I answered your question. If I didn't answer your questions well enough, please put it in the chat. Let me know what you learned. I'm going to summarize a few of the key takeaways because I know we've hit an hour. I had a lot I wanted to talk about, and try not to talk too incredibly fast. I can talk really fast sometimes. So we may have more bacteria in our gut than cells in our body. Keeping a diverse mix of bacteria is really important. Supplements are not necessary in most people's situations. A healthy diet could really fix a lot of things. And just understanding that our understanding of the gut microbiome and utilizing it for disease prevention is fairly limited. Eating more fiber and eating more fermented foods is really important. So one person asked, does a person who doesn't have gut issues need a probiotic? Probably not. If you're not having gut symptoms, you probably don't need a probiotic. You can help your gut by kind of doing those first things of repair and replace, if there are foods that irritate you, and eating more fiber and more antioxidants foods are never going to be a bad thing. Because even if it isn't helping in your gut, those antioxidants, are absorbed and can help with all sorts of inflammatory processes that are going on in our body. And fiber can help feed that good bacteria that are producing short chain fatty acids and other peptides and things that are really beneficial for our health. So the food aspect is always going to be good for you, even if you're not experiencing gut issues. If you are experiencing gut issues, a probiotic may be something to consider. Again, with the caveat of there's a lot of different strains out there, and everybody is going to respond to different ones differently. And so being aware of that. It's hard to reduce the stress in life. It is so hard to reduce the stress in our life. Um, a really good show, if you have Disney Plus, it's called Limitless. I'm pretty sure is what it's called. Um, I've met more women who like it than men because it has Chris Hemsworth in it, and he takes his shirt off a lot for actual legitimate reasons. But it doesn't hurt that he's attractive and very muscular. Um, but one of the first episodes is in the series. They're all about ways to help you live longer. And one of the first episodes is about dealing with stress and how it's not necessarily that we can take the stress out of our life, but we can alter the way we respond to stress, if that makes sense. And it's not easy for sure. But I feel like that was a really interesting way of looking at dealing with the stress of modern life because um there's this funny meme that's been going around for a while that said, people said to take all the stress out of my life. Or to throw all the things that are causing you stress away. So I threw away my husband and kids, right? Like you can't throw like some of the things that cause you stress, like your job, it's a good thing. It gives you money so you can live your life. Your family causes you stress, but they also bring you joy. If there are things in your life that are giving you stress that you can cut out, great. But if not, then no. Can you stay on probiotics forever? I don't think it's for most of them, there is no harm. Again, we don't have, it's a newish area of research that we just don't have like these longitudinal studies of people taking it forever. Also, people are really bad at taking things for a really long time, me included. So it can be a little difficult to study that, but as of now, there's no harm in like continuing to take them. Like I said, most of them, they're not gonna actually colonize much. So like many things, if your body doesn't want it, it will just poop it out. So I hope that answered that question. So I did want to offer, if it's okay with everyone, I'll try to be really quick. I did cover a little bit tonight, but I do have a 3-part method, log, live, and learn to my food freedom system. And I have just revamped the system, and the price is going to be going up significantly because of the revamp and the added value I am adding to it. So with my new system, you get 8 visits with me. You're going to get weekly accountability check-ins or through email or text on your preference. When you on a week where you're not visiting with me, you get unlimited email support. You'll get a free subscription to Chronometer Gold, which is the paid version of that app. And I will review your food intake while you use that app. You get a 2-week personalized meal plan with grocery list, and all those recipes will be put into Chronometer so that it's easy if you're eating them to just track your intake from them. And then you'll get access to the system to build your own meal plan after that and have that reviewed by me so I can help you see how you can do this on your own once you're done working with me. We will have a detailed goal setting guide that will help you and me set smart goals that are going to work for you. We will have an evaluation for mindful eating, and if you need supplements, I can offer wholesale dispensary pricing with no benefit to me, just cost savings for you if that is needed. Bonuses that are being added are these self-paced programs that you can get access to. And just for being in this, you will get access to a 21-day better gut health program for having done this. So the price will be going up October 1st to $950 from what had been $800 before. But if you go through from going through this class, if I can get this to let me do something, there we go. you can register with the that link. And if you purchase, you get the lower price and the bonus gut health program. If you purchase or have booked a call with me before October 1st, and the coupon code, if you wanted to book, is called Gut Health Fast. And if you just want to talk with me about it before or what, then we can talk about it and you can still get that discounted price. This isn't clicking when I wanted it to. There are payment plans available, and it is important to note that all of it needs to be completed within 6 months. So the self-paced programs you'll have access to for 6 months. I call it the 3-month food freedom system, but you can have access to me for up to 6 months if you want to spread out the visits a little bit longer. Another option, if you are just interested in more gut health, I do have a 21-day Better Gut Health program that's going to have 3 weeks of modules where you learn. It has 3 weeks of meal plans, including grocery lists and prep guides to help you do more gut, to help you with your gut health, specifically geared to the things that we talked about. You will get one 45-minute session with me at the beginning or end, whichever you prefer. And then you will get a Chronometer Gold subscription for the length of the program. And those recipes, again, from those meal plans will be available in Chronometer Gold. That's normally going to be $125. But with the coupon code GutCheck15, you can get $15 off, so that it's only $110 if you purchase that before October 1st. Any of the self-paced programs, including this one, or if you purchase the whole package, the self-paced programs will not start until you will get access starting October 1st. So the access to that will not be available immediately. And then I do have other packages or programs and payment options that are available if you just want to get on a call with me about how all of that works. But I wanted to say, if this will click through, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you taking the time and spending your evening with me. And if there are any other questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat. I will be here for a couple more minutes that I'm happy to answer any questions. And if not, this recording, if you want to access it again later, is going to go out by the end of day tomorrow for sure. I just have to get the video to process and upload and all of those things from it. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat. Otherwise, have a great night. Thank you so much, ladies, for coming. It was good to see you.